Welcome to this last webinar from the RCSA. It's our last one for the year. We're going to start again in January next year. My name is Marloes Reining and I'll be your facilitator today. Who are we? We are the Regenerative Collaborative of South Africa, which is a non-profit organization focused on transforming our built environment into a regenerative one. We promote strategies and approaches that bring regenerative design and construction to life. We work collectively to inspire, educate, and create awareness and contextualize regenerative built environment approaches in the South African context. We really make an effort to showcase local projects, local people, and local companies that are aligned with our goal, which is creating a regenerative future. And as I mentioned, this is the last webinar of the year, and I just wanted to very quickly reflect on what we've covered this year, which is actually quite a lot. We did 12 webinars. This is the 12th one. We started off in January with the mushrooms and the mushrooms and the invasive timber. Both being reproduced into new building products, invasive to innovate. And in February, we dealt with a more technical topic, which was around heat pumps and solar PV combined with solar hot water. And then in March, we delved into greenwashing. We talked about greenwashing and all kinds of other types of misinformation around green. In May, we spoke about greening your life, and in June, we had 2 webinars, which both, the one was around looking at different perspectives from the African continent, and then the other one, which we did in collaboration with local talks in Uganda, which was all around creating sustainable education spaces. In July, we dealt with timber. In August, we had an amazing webinar where we were looking at Johannesburg and the city regeneration, and we had 2 really good speakers and one from Josie Majosi. That was really interesting. And in September we did urban farming and urban forests. That was also super inspiring. October we showcased an earth building and living building challenge. And today we're also having a very exciting topic, which is Beyond Green and going into regenerative design. And we're showcasing a very exciting project in KZN, but more on that a little bit later. And if you've missed any of them and you want to see them again, they are available on our YouTube. So go to our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button as well, but you can find all the recordings there of the last 4 years. And then while you're on that, just like our socials, give us a thumbs up for the work that we're doing. We really appreciate it, and it helps us to create a big, larger following, and with that always comes easier to get sponsorships for these kind of webinars. And talking about sponsors, we have a sponsor for this webinar. We're super excited, and I really like to take this moment to acknowledge and thank our sponsor for today, MOSO Bamboo. Andy is on the call, so if you have any technical questions around the product, he's the guy to ask the questions to. Lizette will add the link on the chat box if you want to make contact with them. But their support really makes these conversations possible, and we really appreciate it of that. And also their work embodies many of the regenerative principles that we are here to champion. So MOSO Bamboo, for those who don't know them, is a global leader in high-performance bamboo product, offering a sustainable alternative to traditional materials. Their work is grounded in one of the most powerful beliefs, is that bamboo can help solve some of the most pressing environmental challenges facing our built environment. So why bamboo? Because bamboo is one of the most extraordinary renewable resources on our planet. It's the fastest growing plant on Earth, capable of growing up to 1 meter a day. While tropical hardwoods require decades to mature, bamboo can be harvested in just 4 to 5 years. And the best part, harvesting does not result in deforestation. New stems continuously regenerate from the plant's root system, creating a cycle that's not only renewable, but also regenerative. MOSO bamboo takes this raw material and transform it into a durable, high-quality product suitable for demanding design and construction applications. Through advanced processing techniques, they enhance the natural strength and stability of the bamboo, producing materials that perform exceptionally well in high-traffic areas, harsh climate, and long-term outdoor exposure. You'll find MOSO bamboo in some of South Africa's iconic projects and sustainability-driven projects, including the East Pier Boardwalk at the V&A waterfront, the Marriott Hotel in Norris Arch, and also in a growing number of eco-conscious safari lodges and wilderness properties across the continent, including the one that we are going to discuss today. So these examples show that bamboo is no longer a niche material. It's a high-performance alternative capable of replacing carbon-intensive, slow-growing traditional hardwoods. In doing so, it helps to reduce the pressure on endangered forests, lowers embodied carbon, and supports a more circular and low-impact building industry. What I personally appreciate about MOSO is that their work extends beyond simply supplying a material. They advocate for a mindset shift in our industry, one that recognizes luxury and sustainability can coexist, and that the materials we choose shape the ecological story of our buildings. Their vision aligns beautifully with the regenerative conversations that we're having today. Respecting natural systems, restoring what's been depleted, and designing for long-term resilience. So with that, a huge thank you to MOSO Bamboo for partnering with us and driving innovation that supports both people and planet. I encourage everyone here to connect with them, explore their work, and follow their platforms. They have wonderful case studies, product insight, and design inspiration on their Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thanks again to MOSO for supporting this event and for championing a more regenerative future for the built environment. And I'm going to share a very quick video.
It all starts with bamboo, transformed into high-performance products that shape the built environment, from stylish flooring to durable decking, from modern cladding to exclusive beams. Building the future with bamboo.
So thanks again, MOSO Bamboo, for sponsoring this webinar. We really appreciate it. And then on to the topic of the day, which is Beyond Green. We've got two amazing speakers as usual, but today is going to be really exciting. I'm very excited about this topic. So we have Chris Galliers. He is a South African conservationist specialist with more than 20 years of experience in the protected area management, wildlife economies, environmental governance, and rhino protection. With a background in natural sciences, he's worked across reserve management, wildlife translocation, game range education, ecotourism development, and conservation initiatives in community landscapes. He has been a prominent leader in rhino poaching prevention since 2010, including coordinating Project Rhino in KZN. Chris served 2 terms as a chair on the Game Ranges Association of South Africa and has represented our continent on the International Ranger Federation as an executive since 2012. In 2019, he was elected president of the IRF, and he's currently in a 2nd term following re-election at the 2024 World Ranger Congress. He now works with Conservation Outcomes, which is a non-profit dedicated to supporting biodiversity conservation on private and communal lands beyond traditional state protected areas. He's not a typical architect. He's looking at it from a conservation side, but we're really interested to hear what he's gonna present. And then after Chris, we have Graeme Labe. He is the managing director and co-founder of Luxury Frontiers, a globally recognized design and development firm leading the way in experimental hospitality and ecotourism. With over 20 years in the international hotel and leisure industry, Graeme has worked at the intersection of luxury, sustainability, and innovation, helping brands to create iconic eco-lodges, camps, and immersive nature-based experiences around the world. Under his leadership, Luxury Frontiers has built a reputation for redefining what luxury can mean, combining exceptional guest comfort with deep environmental sensitivity and genuine community value. Graeme is passionate about advancing hospitality beyond doing less harm and towards regenerative design, restoring ecosystems, enriching local communities, and strengthening our connection to the place. So with that, I think we're all very excited to hear from these two gentlemen. So if I can invite Chris to share your screen and kick us off.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. It's fantastic. Today, I will be talking on a very special project that certainly from conservation outcomes, we've been involved in the project for a very long time. And I'm going to run through the project. Really, when we started out, it was a big dream to turn this landscape into a Big Five game reserve, KZN's newest Big Five reserve. So, as Marloes mentioned, I work for Conservation Outcomes. I'm a conservation manager, and I am the current president of the International Ranger Federation, which really is a privilege. It gives me opportunity to work across many protected areas, not only in South Africa or Africa, but also around the world. So, just an introduction in terms of where Babanango Game Reserve is based. It's based in KwaZulu-Natal. The map is shows it there. It's in the north western sort of side of KZN, not very far away from places that you might know, Vryheid, the town of Vryheid, and a place called Melmoth. But obviously it's named after the town called Babanango, which was actually made famous by a Johnny Clegg song, which is just to the south of the reserve. It also has a beautiful section of the White Umfolozi River flowing through it. So I just want to take you through the sort of origins of the project. It essentially looked at maybe this sort of seed of the idea was 2012, and this was through a community who were successful land claimers through the land restitution program. They were successful in claiming 28,000 hectares, and that was the Mtagwini Community Trust. So that they got in about 2008, 2009, and they actually got title deeds, which is very important. So they are the owners of the land, which makes them the ultimate decision makers of that land. At the time, they wanted to look at the development of a portion of the property as a nature reserve, developing a sort of an ecotourism-based model on the land that they had got. So in 2013, there's an assessment was done by the State Conservation Agency, KZN Wildlife, and they did an assessment to evaluate whether the property was worthy of attaining nature reserve status. Now, nature reserve status is the highest level that private land can attain in terms of a legal conservation layer. What that means is basically the area, that land becomes designated as part of the state protected area network, but in private hands and privately run, but it has the same legal protection, and it has to remain as conservation in perpetuity. In 2016 and 2017, We also put in funding applications because the community wanted this, the development of this project, but there was no funding to initiate it. Now, there's a whole lot of beneficiaries, about 400 or so members of the Mqagwini Community Trust, and they were starting to say, well, we want, you've been telling us about this project, but nothing's materialized. Various applications to government had not been successful, and so we had the risk of a large section of their land, which was, we were looking at developing the project, was at risk of people going onto it and building houses, etc. We're very fortunate that the property did not have anyone resident on that property. So about 15,000 hectares of land where there wasn't actually anyone living on there, which was a big bonus. So just why this is important. So looking at an ecotourism model, a lot of the land had been used previously for livestock farming. And what we know from various studies is that from an economic performance, wildlife-based tourism operations actually generates approximately 2.5 to 3 times the economic output per hectare, which is quite considerable. But also it's linked to the skills. Far more skills are required on an ecotourism operation than conventional agriculture, and also employs a lot more people than your conventional livestock agricultural operations. So going back to the process, what we looked at, we were able to actually put in a funding application to get some initial funding to kind of look at getting the reserve investor ready. And that was through the land user incentive scheme. We looked at also clearing a lot of alien plants to restore the landscape. And that would include employing a lot of community members as well. So the first step was that we went to market because government was not coming to the party with funding to develop the vision for the community. So we had an initial investor that was interested in 2017, early 2017, but that fell away. And then later on in 2017, we made contact with a potential investor, Mr. and Mrs. Weiser, through the African Habitat Conservancy, who actually initiated a feasibility assessment, which culminated in June 2018. After presenting to them about the opportunities and so on, they decided that this was a project that was that they were going to invest in. It was a very difficult year, that 2017. It was very dry. The landscape was quite bleak after fires. When we brought the investor, it was October, so there's just uncontrolled fires had been through the reserve. It wasn't looking really good, but still on the back of that, there was interest. The landscape itself was still, still a beautiful area. The land was also being overrun with poaching, incidents of large packs of dogs coming onto the property, brought in from all over the province to initiate a whole range of different hunting or illegal hunting activities, poaching. So the wildlife there was really under pressure, getting heavily utilized. There was a lot of wood harvesting as well, and also there was significant overgrazing taking place. There was over 2,600 head of cattle that were grazing on there. Some of them were from communities, but local communities who lived nearby, but there were also a number of large herds of almost commercial operators that had seen free access to grazing and brought in their cattle to access that free resource. When we went there, it felt like it was quite sort of a pioneering exercise. It felt there was, all the roads, there was hardly any roads that were in existence. And so it was kind of driving through the landscape, trying to understand the lie of the land, and this is a significant feature in the landscape, as we'll talk about it. This is the hill called Madweleni, which is quite central in the reserve, a big rocky outcrop. And yeah, it was literally walking long distances trying to navigate your way through the reserve without roads. So here's an idea of the reserve, just a map. Babanango is to the south, and the sort of just in the, you can see in the middle, well, the sort of upper part of the reserve, you've got that line going through there. That's the Umfolozi River, which is about 21 kilometers of river that runs through the reserve. Also, I mean, in terms of what attributes did it have to qualify for a nature reserve, and this is a standard assessment process. But first of all, we've got to look at where does it fit in from a provincial perspective, and there's a lot of planning that is done around conservation. So the provincial agency has set up these priority conservation corridor areas. So Babanango actually straddled two corridors, which was the Chelmsford corridor and the Northern Interior corridors. You can see that the reserve was actually quite a key, fill in a key area for enhancing those corridors. Also significantly was the diversity of habitats that it had, ranging from misbelt grassland right in the upper grassland areas, and then dropping all the way down to the lower sections of the Umfolozi, which was the sort of KwaZulu-Natal hinterland thornveld. The property is, as I said, diverse in all aspects, not just vegetation, but altitude. It goes from an altitude of 1,426 meters all the way down to 650 meters. This was also very important. The conservation layer, mapping layer, recognizes areas called critical biodiversity areas, and they categorized into 1, 2, or 3, 1 being irreplaceable. And there were a few sections which are largely the misbelt grassland areas that are classified as irreplaceable. We destroy that, you'll never be able to get them back again. So that was very important to have those areas, and that added a lot of value and weight to the reserve becoming a formally protected area. So in terms of the reserve, it has a vision that is not just focused on conservation. It's focused on very important pillars around obviously the conservation side, rehabilitation and conserving the biodiversity, but also importantly, there's a huge diversity of cultural heritage, and also to ensure that there's responsible, sustainable tourism that's developed, and very importantly is that the project must look at enhancing the community and ensuring that there are benefits that are brought about to the landowners of the reserve. So just a breakdown, what happened was that once the Mqagwini community started on the project, then there were 2 other communities, smaller communities on the northern side of the river, the Kwangono community and the Isibongweni community, that decided no, they actually also wanted to put some of their land into the project, which was really good, because otherwise we had to fence off the Umfolozi River. And in conservation, it's never ideal to have a boundary on a river system. We were also able to get in some government land that was critical to the project. So that's the kind of breakdown. The majority of the land is owned by the Mqagwini Community Trust, but then the investor through the African Habitat Conservancy also purchased land. There were some properties that seemed to fall through the cracks in the land restitution program that were still privately owned in amongst the claimed land. So that was bought up and became key parts of the puzzle. And you can see the land ownership map here, the blue being the Mtagwini community, the green being the African Habitat Conservancy land, and then the two different communities on the north, the eastern and western side, the blue and the red, the Kongono and Esmongweni communities, and then a small section of government-owned land. And that has brought the reserve to be a size of 20,000 hectares. It's a place of immense beauty as well. As I say, diversity in terms of the vegetation, diversity in altitude, and diversity of geology and landscapes. It really is a stunning place. I'm just going to show you some of the beauty. I'll try and portray it through some images from the reserve. Also, from a botanical perspective, there's some really rare plants. This is Aloe gerstneri. This aloe is a summer flowering aloe, and it is the largest population is only found in this river system of the reserve. So it's a very endemic aloe to the area, and as I said, the population is doing well inside the reserve. The misbelt grassland is also beautiful. It's got these sort of aloe forests as well on top, where you have views for miles around. It really is stunning. Amazing sort of weather as well that adds a sort of drama to the landscape. High level of frequency of thunderstorms, and it's at this time of year it is quite dramatic. There's the wildlife. So some of the features of the Big Five, sourcing the wildlife was very important. Sourcing from the right areas was very, very important. And then also we had the introduction of other species, very important species, such as rhino, white rhino, but you can also get a sense of the landscape there as well. Incredible birding, with over 335 bird species recorded so far on the reserve. There's likely to be more as the birding intensity increases on Babanango Game Reserve. And then you get some unique sightings like the blue cranes and having elephants in the background, which is not something that you see in many other reserves. As I said, it was very important at the outset to work. We worked very closely with the community. This was atop one of the mountains where we're looking at maps and actually looking at where we're going to put the fence line, which was decided on by the community to ensure that they still had grazing opportunities and didn't. So there was a balance between putting land into the reserve, but also ensuring that they still had grazing for their livestock. Fencing was a massive project, over 84 kilometers of fencing going up, and as you can imagine with that terrain and altitudinal variation, fencing was not easy. And this is obviously 2.4 meters game fence electrified to secure the Big Five from getting out. Also, from an ecological restoration perspective, as I said to you, it was heavily utilized. There was also a drought from the very dry years 2017 through to 2019. So we had to, putting a fence around, reducing the stocking densities on the reserve, and it was really about trying to build back the vegetation, and that is ongoing, but we certainly have seen some progress, and we've been fortunate as well with subsequent good rainy seasons. Tied to that is also alien plant programs, really going through the reserve and clearing alien plants across the reserve, which is a costly exercise, but hugely important. Also been introducing a lot of threatened species, as I mentioned, white rhinos and cheetah, black rhinos, orobi, and most recently is introducing leopards. This is some of one of the first females that was introduced onto the property, and very exciting times, as you can imagine, but also very scary introducing lions. You're always questioning, are your fences intact and going to keep the lions in from escaping? Buffalo, also same thing. They've been fantastic. Very tricky process of introducing buffalo. It's not like cows. They're very expensive, disease-free animals, and also sourcing the right genetics to ensure a sustainable population. So we did get animals from around the country, well, I say around the country, from areas in the country that are most suitable, because you do need animals that are used to that terrain. Otherwise, they can be susceptible to diseases and die. Also bringing on the big guys, elephants, no small feat either in introducing elephants. And this was an elephant being caught in Tembe Elephant Park. We brought in bulls from Tembe to Babananga Game Reserve. And then lastly, introducing female leopard population with the poaching. We had run a camera trap survey for 5 years, and we hadn't seen a single female leopard captured on camera traps, which meant that we had one male. We kept seeing the same male for 3 years, but there were no females. So this year, we've introduced 2 female leopards onto the property, and so far it's still holding thumbs, but so far so good. They're there, and they seem to be thriving. So in total, we have introduced over 3,500 animals onto the reserve. So a complete rewilding program at a massive expense, and it takes sourcing all these different animals to form a reserve. But it's also only as good as the people that protect it. So it was also about developing an anti-poaching team as well, one that was professional and also able to meet the challenges in the landscape. KZN is still has the highest level of rhino poaching in the province. So it's an ever-present threat. And so we need to have a really good anti-poaching structure on the reserve, and then also aiming to create local jobs through local recruitment and training. So this is what we have now. We've got a canine unit on the reserve and a really professional team of rangers that are doing amazing work on the reserve. Also, the reserve is an absolute crucible for research. Amazing place to do research. And so one of the research projects has been around secretary birds. They are listed as endangered. They're on the South African coat of arms. And we have seen a massive decline. So we've been working with key partners, and in this case, it's been BirdLife South Africa to put a tracking device onto one of the chicks, and we've been monitoring the progress of that bird since 2021, December 2021, and it's been really interesting. The bird was named Bob. And Bob didn't go very far, a bit of a homebody as compared to some of the other chicks that have been tracked around the country. Bob went to Kalenzo, and he has traveled quite a long distance since then, over 16,000 kilometers since December 2021. But he settled literally within eyeshot of the reserve. Rorkersdrift and Isandlwana, the battlefields, you can see from the top of the reserve, and that's where Bob is resident now, and happy to report that he's found a mate and is nesting, and they actually have eggs in their nest as we speak. So really exciting to track the progress and use this reserve for research. As I mentioned, communities are key. Creating benefits is critical. There's a large number of communities around the reserve, particularly to the west, which is Ngonyama Trust Land. And so the license to operate really comes from working with communities and providing benefits. You can see also from that map, those areas to the west are quite degraded versus the reserve, which still is a sort of a greener color as opposed to a browny color. It shows that it has more vegetation, which is exactly what a reserve is about, but at the same time, it's a big concern that these reserves become islands. So part of the work is working beyond the boundaries. It's not just about working inside the reserve, it's working outside. So taking a One Health approach, working with the communities to secure their livestock, which is critical to their livelihoods, but obviously part of their culture too. So we have been working with the community in trying to address some of the disease concerns, because inadvertently that can affect wildlife as well, but it leads to improved economic opportunities to those communities around the reserves. Also, just in terms of employment, the reserve employs a lot of local people. Over 70% of the staff are sourced from local communities. So that's a huge benefit. Another benefit is that the land is leased, so there's a lease fee. There's a profit share agreement as well with regards to tourism. And so there are significant benefits that certainly I don't believe that if it wasn't for the wildlife and this landscape, that there would be any other sector that would have leveled this amount of investment into this rural landscape, which I think is critical to understand. So key milestones, just finishing off, was fencing the reserve, the amicable removal of community livestock from the reserve to be able to bring in the wildlife, the introduction of the endangered species, as well as the Big Five, establishment of the competent ranger teams to secure that investment, expansion of the reserve to include government land, which was key land, and very importantly is the number of jobs that have been created, and the benefits for the community, and the ownership of wildlife by the community as well. And finally, the declaration, securing that land in perpetuity for conservation. It is a declared protected area now, and as a result of that, its declaration, it secures the investment, and through this process, creating a sustainable wildlife-based economy has laid the foundation for even greater investment through the development of the ecotourism infrastructure, which Graeme is going to talk on. So yeah, it's been an amazing project, really once in a lifetime project. Amazing to see a landscape transformed in a very short period of time to what it is today. So yeah, it's been really exciting, and happy to share more. And I'd like to hand over to Graeme. Thank you.
Great, very inspiring. Graeme, over to you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for the introduction and having me on this webinar. It's a great privilege. I'd also like to thank Chris for an amazing presentation, which really has set the landscape for my part of the talk. I really had the privilege of being involved in this project since 2018, and in various design, in kind of various design capacities through that time. You know, kind of just to kind of reiterate what Chris is saying is that, you know, kind of having this privilege and being there, and I, you know, kind of, I was there on site and looking for the various sites and particular site that we were working on, is seeing this transformation. When we started kind of sourcing the site or scouting the different sites, those images of all the cattle, you know, within the landscape are those kind of images that we were working around at the initiation of this, and to see and live that transformation has been an amazing experience. And you know, you can't believe the commitment that the investors have put into this, the commitment of Chris and his organization that's gone into this. And, really a big hat off to the communities that had the foresight for a project like this. So to start off, I'm, for Babanango, Chris has set the foundation for me to discuss what sustainability really means when you design a hospitality experience or lodge or camp in a remote location or in a location that is part of a rewilding program. Every decision has been amplified to impact not only directly on the land that we build on, but the conservation of the greater landscape and its effect on surrounding communities. I want to just begin with a simple, important idea. If sustainability doesn't make sense, then it's just a story and not a solution. And this is something that we are really proud of, that this is not just a story, it is a real solution. And I genuinely mean that sustainability only works when it's practical, logical, and beneficial to everyone who touches the project. It has to make sense to the client who invests, the operator who runs it, the staff who maintain it, and the environment that holds it. And then kind of most of all, and you've seen this in Chris's presentation, to the community that is involved and really kind of benefits from these projects. We also need to look at all the other role players, such as the contractors who build it, and then of course, ultimately, the guests who experience. As designers, it is our role to act as facilitators and not dictators. Often, kind of clients see that from their designers, that their designers, are not prepared to mediate and facilitate, but rather than dictate. So when we look at these kind of projects, before we start creating anything, we start by listening. And we try to understand the goals and the needs and the concerns of each stakeholder. Once that understanding is understood, we look for the overlaps. And in these moments where different interests align and where shared opportunities emerge, it is in those intersections that sustainability framework begins to form. This is not just a checklist, but it's a continuous conversation that guides us through the entire design and construction process. This framework became especially important when we did Madweleni River Lodge in the Babanango Game Reserve. From the outset, we knew that the relationship between the environment, the community, and the guest experience were going to need to be deeply interconnected. And so did all the role players. And you saw this from the vision of Babanango Game Reserve. Kind of having that vision to start off with was instrumental in our design process. The mandate for the project was clear. We needed to create an exceptional award-winning lodge that guests would be drawn to, while ensuring that their stay directly contributes to conservation, research, and supports the surrounding community. In other words, the project had to be both striking and deeply responsible, and those two quantities have to enhance each other and not compete. As you've heard from Chris, the Babanango Game Reserve starts as a patchwork of land. This gave us a rare opportunity to explore an incredible diverse set of biospheres, identify a site that truly suited to an immersive wildlife experience. Because we were involved in this earlier stage of the conservation tourism, we were able to find the correct site. And we witnessed, kind of, as I said earlier, we kind of really kind of had this time to witness the kind of change in the land and the evolution of the landscape. But it did take us through this time quite a bit of time to envision what was the right area and what this landscape would eventually come to When it came to selecting the site for the lodges, our team spent several weeks traversing the reserve, climbing ridges, crossing valleys, walking through rivers. Eventually, we reached a point where the white inflorescence revealed itself, and we knew that we had come to something special. For the river, for the guests, the river becomes more than a visual feature. It connects them to the surrounding landscape and makes the seasonal changes clearly visible through the variations of the river flow. This step one in the design process, the site selection, became the fundamental and foundation that ensures the lodge or the camp aligns with the vision agreed upon by every stakeholder, from the community to all the conservation partners. From the beginning, our intention was to tread lightly and harmonize with the landscape. We wanted the guests to feel perched along the river edge, immersed in nature, but never imposing on it. We positioned our units carefully so that they echoed these solid ground forms. We angled views in a way that they revealed the drama of the white Umfolozi. And while avoiding visual intrusion on privacy on other areas in the reserve, as you kind of heard from Chris, is that there is kind of a great variation of height and elevation in the property, and finding spaces that became private, both for the guests staying in the lodge and the rest of the visitors to the reserve, and not impeding on their experience. Every decision was balancing act between the environmental sensitivity and the guest experience, including high water setbacks, adherence to the reserve's environmental guidelines. But design is not only about the land, it's also about the people who call the land home. Cultural storytelling became a key pillar to the design. We drew inspiration from Izulu traditions, fighting sticks, shields, and the woven forms of traditional beehives. This rhythmic pattern of local crafts influences found their way into the architecture and interiors in a subtle yet meaningful way. For instance, door handles were shaped like fighting sticks. Roof lines echoed the curves of the shields. Boma structures are reinterpreted traditional weaving techniques. These elements didn't just decorate their space, they anchored it in its cultural context, allowing the design to kind of settle naturally into its surroundings. A major part of the sustainability narrative involved exploring different construction methodologies, ranging from tinted architecture to prefabricated systems. Many components were prefabricated off-site and manually assembled on-site using techniques that allowed local community members to easily learn and master. This not only reduced the impact, but created meaningful employment opportunities through the construction period. We also wanted to push beyond traditional tinted typologies and challenge these forms in terms of the look and feel. One of the most distinctive structural what we also kind of looked at in kind of terms of materiality and is looking at materials that were also not only work from a prefabricated perspective, but also the choice of materials from a sustainable perspective. One of the most distinctive structural elements that we used in the design was a 22-meter timber ridge beam. Normally, this would require a crane to bring it onto the site and lift it up onto its structural form. But to avoid any heavy machinery, we reimagined the engineering. The beam was then broken up into 3 parts, lifted manually using rollers and block and tackle system to bring it onto the ridge. This approach helped us to limit the use, as we said, of heavy machinery, But the real benefit of this is during the construction, it helped us to limit the impact on the surrounding site and limiting the disturbance to tree lines, natural grasses, and helped us for the future regeneration of the site after construction. In terms of material, we sourced stone directly from the site for wall features, which not only reduced emissions from transport, but aligned with local building techniques. We ensured that materials such as MOSO bamboo were used to cut down kind of carbon emissions. So, when we went through this process, it was really, really important for all our material selection. We needed to design large span buildings that would traditionally rely on concrete, knowing that in the environment and the consequence that that approach would have. We explored lightweight membranes and an alternative to kind of concrete forms that could deliver the same contemporary character through experimentation with lightweight structures and roofing membranes, and with the support of a structure and waterproofing membranes, we were able to rework certain concrete products which achieved the same aesthetic and performance that we were able to do in terms of giving these large mud-looking roofs without using conventional concrete structures. If we had done that concrete, the amount of Portland cement that we would have used, the impact of the concrete on the site would have been huge. And it was these kind of innovations that were key to the success of this project. In terms of bringing in the community craftsmanship, played an equally important role. Many decorative items and pieces, from furniture to artwork, and crafted elements were developed by artisans from the surrounding communities. Where we could not find an exact piece, what we did is we went into the community, we gave designs and training to the community in order for them to make these pieces for us, but in line with their local traditional arts and crafts. This meant the lodge didn't just sit in the landscape, it was shaped by the people of the landscape. Their knowledge and their hands and their traditions became part of what the guests experienced, but also provided economic benefit to the community. We looked at ways to ensure that the greatest share of the manufacturing costs and the supply costs flowed back into the community itself. One of the major features of the lodge is the boma. We were asked to design a shared boma for the whole reserve and not only for the lodge itself. This had to be an independent form from the main lodge property. As Chris mentioned, a large part of the reserve's regeneration was involved the removing of invasive species, particularly black wattle. When we had learned of this initiative, it became clear to us that wattle had to play a central role in the structure's narrative. The question then became how to integrate the wattle into the architectural form. We then turned to the shapes embedded in local tradition, the curved lines of the Zulu basket and the beehive huts, which historically used wattle in their construction process. These vernacular references became the basis for the boma's form. We also asked ourselves how meaningfully to involve the community, given that we were already engaged in the wattle, wattle eradication. And just as a number, on an ongoing basis, more than 26 community members on an ongoing basis are involved in that eradication process on a daily basis. By bringing artisans who weave and construction process, we've created work opportunities to support local traditional skills and ensure that the community would have a long-term stewardship over the structure in the future. This resulted in a space that was regenerative, culturally grounded, and environmentally restorative. Once the ongoing principles behind the BOMA is the material itself, and we understood that this would eventually fail. We chose this natural product knowing that it would deteriorate and knowing that it would be needed to be replaced, and knowing that the landscape would continue to supply as part of the eradication process. This keeps a cycle of a cycle continuous, removing the invasive species, restoring waterways, rebalancing the ecosystem, and creates continued work within the community. For guests, the BOMA becomes not only a beautiful outdoor dining space, but also a story of regeneration that they encounter and understand through the experience. From a sustainability perspective, infrastructure and MEP considerations in this development like this shouldn't just be aspirational, they should be standard. Water systems, power solutions, and waste process and energy management were non-negotiables and foundations of the project, embedded from the beginning rather than added on enhancements. We looked on everything from an environmental perspective, from waste, water, mechanical plumbing, and energy. All of these elements contribute to a closed loop and self-sustaining system. This environment benefits from rewilding efforts and increases the biodiversity. This attracts guests looking for a unique and meaningful experience. Their stay generates revenue that supports conservation and community programs. The community contributes through craftsmanship, construction, and ongoing lodge operations. Each part supports the other, forming a complete, balanced, and enhanced ecosystem. To close, I want to emphasize that one final thought around the sustainability is not a template. It's a process that takes time, collaboration, and commitment. It requires us to move beyond shortcuts and truly engage with the place and people for the long-term future of the project. As I said in the beginning, it was a true privilege to be part of a project grounded in true conservation and regeneration, and really truly gives back to its community. What really also meant a lot for us is that as a commercial entity, it is not your normal commercial entity. It's where all the kind of profits and the revenues from this project goes back into the reserve and back to the community. I think what we want to do is that, add a few more facts to this, is we know that kind of protected supported areas by nature-based tourism experience and diversity recovery, that it kind of creates 2 to 3 times faster than any unfunded conservation area. And that's the importance of ecotourism in these areas. Also on this, the allocation of land lease income and conservation levies and other benefits from the reserve are vital to this economic well-being of the surrounding communities. And when we look at these projects as designers, we need to take all these factors into account to ensure that we are not just creating structures from a perspective of creating something iconic, but we need to look at all of the requirements of the role players and ensure that these are taken into the design to get the best outcomes for the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Graeme. As you said, it's like it must be a dream to work on a project like that and to see it growing from start from like the early days to where it is now. I've given everyone the opportunity to ask a question in person. So if you want to ask a question to either Chris or Graeme, and I'm going to invite you guys to switch on your cameras and reveal yourselves. Any questions from the audience for these two great presentations? You can put up your hand. This crowd always needs to warm up a little bit. So in the meantime, I'll have a question ready. I know Marty is on the line, so there will be a question. Oh, there he is. Do you want to ask it, Marty, or can I ask mine first?
You go first, ladies first. Come, Maurice.
I'm just curious, from a financial perspective, I mean, this must cost a bomb. What kind of companies would invest in like a conservation effort like this? Is it international? Is it the South African company? Is it the South African government? Is it who comes up with the money?
Chris, I'll let you answer that question.
Sure. Maurice, it's a good question, and I think perhaps one of the biggest disappointments of the project has been the sort of absence of government in such an incredible project, a project that ticks every box that the country needs. Foreign investment into economically depressed rural landscapes, rural development, job creation, skills development, the list goes on. This is an incredible project that has brought, as I said, in a significant investment that I don't think, if it wasn't for the wildlife and the nature of that landscape, it would attract any other industry that would be able to compete with it. So that's on the one side. The investment is absolutely significant, and it is foreign investment that has come in. By the scale of it, in terms of what has been invested, it is a large amount, but what has been developed and what is being created, it's actually, I think, relative because of our exchange rate. It's not a lot of money in terms of what has been created. And also, so the investment is not a financial business investment, a traditional investment where the aim is to get a return on that investment. No, it's about creating a legacy in terms of setting up a sustainable project that will run for beyond the investor's lifetime. So you got to remember, the investor could have gone and bought a lodge fully developed on a Big Five reserve, no hassle, no stress, but the investor took on the idea of doing something new that would benefit people and the environment into the future.
Yeah, that's amazing. We need more of those.
If I can, this is a very unique model, and that's why it was such a privilege to be part of a project like this. There are other models, and kind of Chris has worked on those kind of models that have maybe a greater balance between economic benefits both to the private sector and to kind of wildlife. And there are models that are kind of less intense like this, but also give benefits back to wildlife protection and regeneration. But this one is really a very unique situation.
Great. All right, go for it, Marty.
Cool. Well, just want to start by saying this is an amazing, awesome achievement. Well done, guys. It's just incredible. And loved your presentations. It was just breathtaking. I just wanted to ask, in terms of environmental impact assessments and all of those things, in these sorts of environments is always very difficult, in my experience. And even if you are being responsible, almost the mechanics of the systems are very difficult to deal with. I mean, this property isn't in a World Heritage Site or anything like that, which is one of the ones that I'm dealing with, which makes it more complicated. But yeah, just maybe talk about those environmental impact assessments, because almost there's this anti-development kind of mindset amongst things, but development is necessary to give value to the property, as you guys have shown. So that's the one sort of aspect, if you could maybe talk about. And then the other thing I wanted to just talk about is the poaching side of things, and the local community. Did you guys experience, because you've almost engaged the local community in the way that you have you seen that there isn't poaching happening? And because it's community ownership, is there a different mindset to the whole aspects of poaching? And then the last thing, is it net zero and green and all of those things? I'm sure it is, and just tell us about it. Thanks.
But should we break up the project, the questions in kind of different parts? So maybe you can kind of talk to the level of the environmental impact assessments on kind of the greater reserve, and I can talk about the environmental input assessments on the development sides.
Sure.
And then I think you can talk to the question around poaching, and I'll talk to the net zero question.
I'll add to that as well. So just in terms of the EIAs, I think what was important is that the project was part of a flagship wildlife economy node. South Africa has a biodiversity economy strategy, one of which is around getting more communities and certainly the sort of wildlife-based economies into the sort of Black ownership, as it's termed there. So really transforming the sector. As a result of that, this project falling within the Mfolozi biodiversity economy node, it was, and ecotourism is obviously part of that wildlife economy development. And as a result of that, it did get, I think, some level of special attention in terms of the EIA process. Because it's being declared as a nature reserve, obviously there's a lot of sensitivities that had to be taken into account, but it was seen as a sympathetic development that would ensure the sustainability, or contribute hugely to the sustainability of the protected area. So I think from that side, it did help with the EIA process to some degree, because there was government buy-in to the concept. So yeah, that's from my side.
From the actual site development, what we had to do is we had to go through the norms of, the normal development plans, having to submit an EIA on the development itself. We went through all the norms of submitting to council and getting council approval. So we went through that process. It did slow us down in certain respects, slightly, but we didn't see any major road, and I think it was more around, we were kind of set in the COVID period. So it was really about kind of during that time that government went through more of a shutdown than roadblocks in the actual environmental process. So I think we were fortunate, but we did go through all the kind of statutory requirements for the developments of the site itself.
I see there's two more hands, so maybe Nicholas, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so first of all, thanks, Graeme and Chris. It was a very interesting presentation and project. Chris, in your presentation, you mentioned that the land is owned, I think it was 75% by the community, and there's a system of profit sharing, amongst the community themselves. I'm just interested to know, does that ownership and profit sharing also relate in some way to the lodge itself? or are those sort of separate entities? And if so, like, what are the mechanisms where the profit sharing and the community benefit from, you know, things like the lodges being built? You know, I don't know if that makes sense. Sorry.
Okay, we still need to answer Marty's other two questions. So if you, I'm just going to answer that because it's quite I'll say simple. It's not that simple, but in terms of from there are other lodges on the property as well. In addition to Madruleni is the flagship lodge, but in terms of the profit share, it's across the tourism. Across the lodges and the sort of tourism operation. Obviously that profit share is when there's profitability. So still getting there, so that's not quite happening, but there is a conservation and community levy that is rendered on all bookings. So there is revenue generated through every tourist that comes to the reserve. So I hope that answers the question, and maybe
Yes,
I'll just go back to the other one, Marty's other questions. So just on the poaching, yes, I think it's a very difficult situation because not all the people living around the reserve are beneficiaries of the land owning community. So it's not. But saying that, a fair chunk of the land around the reserve is owned and lived on by people who are owners of the land in the reserve and are beneficiaries. So I do think that plays quite an important role. And as I said, it's the key to your license to operate. So far, there hasn't been any. There hasn't been any poaching, but yeah, obviously it's good while it lasts. It can change at any time. There is still a lot of poaching around the reserve, dog poaching and so on, but inside the reserve, so far it hasn't materialized. So there must be something good happening, that the reserve is providing value to surrounding communities. There must be a social, what we call a sort of social fence around the reserve.
So maybe I can answer to the kind of question around kind of net zero. So that has been our goal with the project in terms of kind of being kind of net zero in terms of water and power. Where the kind of last stage around power is the last stage to be put in. The investors are looking at a mechanism for the whole reserve and trying to kind of go central off-grid PV. That is a kind of last level of investment that is being looked at for the project, and we're not quite there. It's not quite there yet from a power and a power generation perspective, but that is currently and still being worked on.
Just to add to that, is that the reserve, we have been exploring the reserve generating carbon credits, which the reserve would purchase to offset some of its emissions, to try and sort of further get to that net zero approach. And we are also investigating a biochar program, so credits generated from the removal of the alien plants on the property.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool. All right, we've got two more questions, and after that I'm gonna wrap up just in terms of time. So Anthony, your question first.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Marlus. Yeah, so really cool project. First question is with regards to poaching and the age of AI, are there any kind of surveillance AI technologies that are out there that can help improve poaching surveillance? Is the first question. And then second question is, when I saw the story about the bird and I saw where it was flying, like the first thing I said to myself is like, putting a bird on a nature reserve, don't they just like fly away? And isn't there risk of that they just fly away and then just go somewhere else? So that's the two questions.
Sure. Okay, so technology is a very important part of the reserve's security systems. There's been a lot invested in that. Fortunately, what happened was that in the development of the reserve, we found that the undersea cable actually came past the sort of front door of the reserve, the undersea internet cable, one of them for South Africa. So it allowed the reserve to tap into very good internet abilities, and that has allowed for some, a diversity of technologies to be used. So from an AI perspective, we use a lot of camera traps, which have AI technology that give us alerts to, different animals that are seen, and humans, etc. So that's used. We're still exploring. There is the use of drones, different types of drones, automated drones, flying fence lines to check fence integrity, but also thermo imagery to check for any incursions and so on. So yeah, technology is a very, very important part in terms of anti-poaching, and it is being used and developed, particularly in that landscape. Every landscape is different. Certainly there where it's all good and well having a drone, but suddenly the mist rolls and the drone can't see anything, so it's not worth anything. Your foundation is still having boots on the ground. They can arrest someone, a drone can't arrest someone, so it's very important. And then just the second question again was
about the bird. Why is it not
the
flying
birds.
away?
Okay. So the birds, yeah. So it is one of the challenges with protected areas. Things like birds. There's a good density of secondary birds in the reserve, so there's no space for additional ones. So they've got to find space outside of that. And there is good landscape and habitat for them in the surrounding area. But as long as you've got a safe landscape where there's a source population, I think that's the role of protected areas, because they are feeders to other protected areas beyond them or into the surrounding landscape, into suitable habitats where they might have been exterminated. But yes, it is a risk that we don't have any controls once they fly outside the reserve. And that's why the corridors are so important as well. Those conservation corridors are very important and prioritize protected area development within those corridors.
Right. Last question for Kat.
Hi guys, Graeme, Chris, thank you for your lovely presentation. My question is related in many respects to a lot of the questions that have gone before, which have picked up on the unique structure of the sort of client and commissioning and investment body. And my question is coming from a design background, really mostly for Graeme, to understand who were your clients in terms of approving the design. Was it just the investors? Was it also the community trust? How did that work? Especially because you spoke a lot about sort of positive cultural representation through your design choices. So yes, how did it work? Who did you present to? Who ultimately made the decisions? How did you bring the community on the journey? Because that's obviously critical to the success of this project. Thanks.
So, this particular project was funded directly by the investors. So at the end of the day, the final decision making was done by the investors themselves. However, we were briefed through the kind of inception phase is to research and engage with community and kind of bring that element into the design. But as I say, as this was funded by the investor, ultimately we got decisions from the investor, and we also were guided through the operating arm of the reserve, who were going to physically operate the lodge. It's not the lodge itself is not operated by a third-party operator, so kind of operational inputs were as important in the guidance given to us as the aesthetic design. Designs were presented through and kind of presented through to community. It was also presented through to local council. So there was quite a collaborative process, but as I say, final decision did come from the investor.
Thank you, Graeme. Thank you, Chris. I have to wrap up because we're running out of time. I would love to have a longer discussion, but I think people are slowly starting the evening as well, so I don't want to hold them up too long. Events for January 2026. We're going to start off with a webinar about 3D printing in the building industry. We haven't set it up, so no registration details yet, but soon in January we'll send you guys the link. Again, very special thanks to our sponsor, MOSO Bamboo. We really appreciate your contribution, and we hope you get a lot of work from this webinar. So like anybody, just go to their website and learn about MOSO Bamboo. Thank you for making it happen. And then special thanks to our speakers of today. It was amazing. It's a brilliant project, and I think we all agree on it. And the presentations were really well delivered. Thank you so much, guys, for being here and joining us on this webinar. And then for anybody out there with too much money that want to sponsor us next year, let us know. We've got sponsor options if you want to just do one webinar or all the webinars for the rest of the year. Just let us know what your budget is, and we'll make it happen. Follow us on our socials. Each click helps us a lot. And then I want to close off with a big thank you to my events committee. You always see my face here, but I've got a fantastic team behind me that organizes these things, does the social media. Amy, who whips up these YouTube videos and manages to get them online. Adil is always helping with like finding the speakers and doing all the logistics behind the scenes and setting up speaker meetings. And Lizette helping us with the sponsorships and doing a great job there. And Betty and Ranjita, who are on the CPD admin, making sure that you guys get your CPD certificates within a reasonable time. So yeah, I want to really put them on the spot here to say thank you, guys. You've done an amazing job, and I think we've got a pretty well organized machine here. And then they sneaked in this slide. I don't want to take myself, so.
So I'm going to quickly jump in here and just on behalf of the team at the RCSA, just want to extend a huge thank you to Marloes for all of her insight and just management. A lot goes behind the scenes into managing that entire team that you saw on the previous slide and sort of facilitating all of these webinars. So on behalf of the rest of the RCSA team, thank you, Marloes. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. And with that, guys, have a lovely evening. Thank you for your support throughout the year, and hope you guys all have a regenerative break, and we can see you again in January. Third Thursday of the month. We're not going to change that. We're going to keep consistent throughout the year. So I really hope to see you back in January. Thank you. Thank you all, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marloes.